together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back to The Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and transitioning from military service to civilian life is rarely a straight path. It's a journey of self-discovery, adaptation, and reinvention. Today, we're sitting down with David Richards, a former Marine Corps officer who served 15 years before stepping into the corporate world. His time in uniform included intense moments such as leading Marines in combat during the initial landing of Operation Restore Hope in Somalia, experiences that shaped his understanding of leadership under pressure. However, despite growing up in a Marine family, it took him over a decade of service to realize that he could be something more than just a member of the Corps. That realization set him on a transformative path. David went on to spend 17 years at Cisco Systems, learning the nuances of corporate leadership and the subtleties of civilian communication, challenges many veterans will find familiar. Now, as an executive coach, best-selling author, and graduate of Tony Robbins' Leadership Mastery Program, he's helping leaders align their purpose with presence and performance. His work blends the discipline of the military, the insights of the modern neuroscience, and the power of faith to help others unlock their full potential. Today, he's here to share his journey, the lessons, the challenges, and the mindset shifts that helped him thrive beyond the uniform. David, brother, welcome to the show, man.
Adam, thank you so much, brother. Yeah, we'll talk about the nuances of civilian communication.
It's a big one, man. It's a really big one, and we're at a kind of a disadvantage. So I'm excited to get there with you and talk about that. But man, every veteran that comes on, first question, where did you grow up and what inspired you to join the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so it was the family business. My dad was born and raised in Iowa. My mom was from Pittsburgh, but my dad joined the Marines in 1959, was an admin clerk initially, and then he decided to become an officer and ended up serving as a rifle platoon commander in Vietnam for 13 months. So I was born into it. I was born in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, just about 30 minutes north of Quantico, the crossroads of the Corps. And that's a unique life to grow up in because you're moving all the time. And we lived in Japan when I was 10. So I had this extraordinary experience to, get firsthand exposure to other cultures. We traveled to the Philippines. We traveled to South Korea. And initially, in the spirit of transparency, I wanted nothing to do with the Marines because by the time I got to high school, I had my teenage angst was directed at the fact that all my friendships ended because we moved. And who's responsible for that? It's the guy wearing the uniform, my dad. And so my angst erupted in that sense. And I remember sitting down with my parents and they saying, we'll pay for half your college. You're going to college first. We'll pay for half, but you're paying for the other half. So you either get a job, you get an academic scholarship, or maybe you go ROTC and that was what my brother did. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll go ROTC, but I'm going to go Navy because it's going to kind of be like this middle finger to my dad, like we're going to join the Navy. So, so I went to Penn State, and if you were ROTC, every semester you have to take one class that's related to naval science. It's called naval science. And at the beginning of your junior year, the Marines branch off from the Navy and they take Marine classes, but the Navy continues to do like ships engineering and stuff. So freshman year, it was about weapons engineering and ships engineering. And this was a liberal arts mind. And so it did not handle the structure and rigidity of engineering. And it's funny because my roommate was, his dad was a Marine Corps officer or Marine Corps warrant officer. We went to high school together and he had gone the Army route. So he had the same sort of mindset that I did. And at the end of our freshman year, we're like, we got to get in the Marines, man. Like, this is crazy. Yeah. And so then and he got like, you have to apply. You can't just like the Navy would just, sure, we'll take you. But the Marines, you had to like pass muster. And I didn't pass muster the first time around. And it was like, what the hell, man? Like, I'm a legacy. Like, this is my family business. So I stopped partying. I stopped drinking. On weekends, I was studying. I made the dean's list, and then I got my physical fitness back up, and that was it. And from there, initially, you go through officer candidate school at the end of your junior year, and you're done. And like at that point, you've drank in the Kool-Aid. Like you're like, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is for life. I'm doing this. But ultimately that was the path that I took.
Yeah. So what did you go to the Marine Corps wanting to do for your job, and what it ended up being your job? Did you get what you wanted?
Yeah, I did. I was artillery initially. So my dad, because he had been infantry, I didn't want to go down that path. My brother had gone. My brother had ended up as motor T, and I don't know. We never really talk about what his decision behind that was. He eventually switched into intelligence, but I went on artillery initially. So again, growing up in the prehistoric time of the 1980s, Top Gun was really big, and initially I thought like, oh, maybe a pilot, and I didn't pass the ASVAB. So I'm like, all right, well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But artillery was like, there was the glamour of combat arms without all the humping, without all the hiking.
Yeah.
And, and so I was artillery, and it was cool because, um, so after basic school in the Marine Corps, every officer goes to the basic school unless you go to one of the academies. But you go to the basic school at Quantico for 6 months to learn how to be an officer, and it's primarily focused on infantry. And then you go to your specialty school. So I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for artillery,
I'm
and it's
sorry.
wild because it was a unique experience for sure. But what's wild about it was, I think there were 20 Marine Corps officers. So we'd already been officers for 6 months by the time we roll in. And then the Army comes in, and these guys are fresh out of school. And it was amazing to see how differently Army enlisted treated their officers compared to Marines. And it was really interesting to see that. It was also cool just to see the differences between the services and go through the training. And then from there, I remember, so that was 5 months, and towards the end of the 5 months, they came out for assignments, and they said, hey, we need 2 second lieutenants to go. There's a unit out in California that's getting ready to deploy in 5 months, and they need 2 lieutenants to round out their thing. So like I raised my hand, and this guy, Mike, raised her hand, and we ended up going to Camp Pendleton, and that was right before Somalia.
Yeah. So talk about Somalia. How was that?
It was intense.
Well, plenty of stuff been made about that at this point.
Yeah. It was intense in that I was part of the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit. So we were on 3 ships that had steamed out of San Diego in October of that year. We went to Hawaii for like a day or half a day. We went to Singapore for like a week or so. And we were supposed to go to Kuwait to do some artillery shooting. And then we're going to steam down to Australia for like 2 weeks of libo. And after Somalia, we got diverted around Thanksgiving time. And they said, after Singapore, we got diverted down to Somalia because of the famine. And it was intense because they kind of explained about Adid, the warlord who had the most power and wasn't willing to share and play nicely with others. And I remember sitting in on the planning exercises and what was going to happen. And initially, so I was a forward observer at this point. So I was attached to an infantry company, but I didn't have any responsibility. And there's only so many artillery classes, call for fire classes you can teach on a ship before people are like, okay, I'm done.
Right.
So in this case, it said, well, okay, so Lieutenant Richards, you're going to take all the cooks and candlestick makers from headquarters company or headquarters platoon, and you're going to turn them into a platoon, and you're going to go set up security for the command element, the battalion landing team's command element, when they come ashore at Mogadishu Airport. So that was my plan. But they also said there are going to be 1,000 armed Somalis at the beach waiting to greet you. Okay, so like we have a couple Cobra attack helicopters. There was I think a carrier strike group came close to Somalia in about 2 or 3 weeks after we landed, but they're like, oh, this is really intense. So we do all the planning, get everything ready, and then it's, okay, you're going to go lights out at 2000, and we'll reveille at midnight, and then you go downstairs, grab all your weapons and ammo, and get on the Amtraks to splash. So you're not sleeping because now you're thinking about the 1,000 armed Somalis, and I was going to be part of the track platoon because the rifle company that I was assigned to had the Zodiacs, like these rubber boats, these fast attack boats, and they were going to take down the port facility so we could start allowing follow-on ships to come in to provide relief. And then I was attached with the Amtrak company, and they were going to land on the beach, secure the airfield to allow follow-on forces to fly in. So, but you're trying to rationalize combat, right? You're like, okay, the chances are that someone is going to shoot me. They have no idea who I am. And it was just like this huge mind game. And I wrestled with that. And I'm sure my bunkmates did for the next 4 hours. And then Reveille comes. We get down into this, we're dressed. It's 3 a.m. We're in the well deck of the ships. Everyone's getting in their Amtraks. And the captain was the Captain Boudreau. He was the infantry commander who owned the Amtraks, the rifle company with the Amtraks. So he comes up to me, and it's like 3:30 in the morning. He's like, "Hey, Lieutenant Richards, your mission's changed. Did you get that word?" No, I didn't get that word, sir.
Because it's typical, right?
Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, you're not going to set up security. You're going to go outside the airfield and establish a roadblock, and you're going to take weapons from people trying to get into the airfield. Do you get a map?" No, sir, I don't have a map. He's like, "Okay, let me get you a map." So he gives me a map, and I get out because I'm in the turret. I'm in the command turret of this Amtrak, and I got 17 Marines beneath me. I got 2 snipers with me too. So I get out, and I'm hunched on the top of the vehicle, and I'm looking at the map with the driver, and we're kind of coming up with, okay, here's the airfield, here's the road we're going to take. And then we splash at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's really beautiful because the moon is setting into the heart of Africa. It was a full moon. There's nothing on the shoreline. There's no electricity or anything. And we wait for I think there were 12 tracks that needed to disembark from the Juno, the ship. So we all get online. We start going in, and there's nothing. It's just darkness. And you're tense, and all of the amphibious vehicles, the Amtraks, have a 40 Mike grenade, automatic grenade launcher as their defense. And the armor obviously isn't as heavy as a tank for navigation purposes. So we get about maybe 200 meters offshore, and we start seeing these flashes from the beach. And in training at officer camp, or not at the basic school, they position you close to where a machine gun is firing, so you can hear what it sounds like when rounds are going by. And you get some of that if you go to the rifle range too, because you're pulling the butts at where the targets are, and so you hear what it sounds like when bullets whiz by. And there wasn't any of that. But you're like, what are these flashes? What is going on? And I think we'd had a conversation with the gunner about let's not fire on the beach yet because I don't hear anything in the water, not hearing these sounds. So we get about 100 yards in, and it's all these camera crews. It's all CNN and Fox and everybody. And there are no armed Somalis, but there are plenty of media on the beach waiting for us to come in. Yeah, it was so surreal because you've worked yourself up for 8 hours now about what to expect, and it's completely the opposite. So we come ashore, and they're not even getting out of the way of the vehicles, right? They're standing here, and you're like, oh, just drive around him. We will.
Yeah.
And it was cool. So we set up the roadblock. We confiscated some weapons, and even that had some intensity because I got the roadblock set up, and the track was off to one side with someone manning the 40 Mike, and then we just started checking vehicles. And around sunrise, this technical vehicle, so it was a Toyota or Datsun pickup with a 50 caliber machine gun mounted in the back, comes rolling up about 50 yards in front of our position. And our ROI was we could not engage someone unless they pointed a weapon at us. So the machine gun is pointed off to one side, and the driver and the gunner are just looking, smiling. And you're puckering because in 1 second, this could go really bad really quickly. They stayed there for probably 10 or 15 seconds, and then they drove off. So all told, we were there for 2 months to allow more follow-on forces to come in. We did a lot of security convoys, so providing security for food routes. I remember actually I was manning a gun once when we had Adid come in with his commanders to a meeting with the UN on the camp or in the airport. But after 2 months, we left. We stayed off the coast for another week and a half or so as the strategic reserve, and then we left and went to Kuwait.
I appreciate you giving that rundown because I think a lot of people forget that the Marines were involved in Somalia also. It's just been so overshadowed. I assume you were probably there when the events of Black Hawk Down took place and all of that.
No, so we landed in December of 92, and we got back we landed December 9th, And then we got back on ship around the first part of February. And I was one of the last guys to get back on the ship because I was the artillery battery's motor transport officer. And we'd
Right.
used so much of the rolling stock. So we put that back on. And then some Black Hawk Down didn't happen until October of '93. So
Okay.
it was like, but you could already see, it's a great point to bring up because you could already see the shift. Like I remember day one being at the airport and just being swarmed by Somalis. And they're like, we love America. We love America. And then I stayed ashore until after Christmas because I celebrated Christmas Day in Somalia. And then I went back on one of the ships because I wanted to, like, I hadn't had a shower in 3 weeks. But I remember I came back like on January 2nd. I think I celebrated New Year's with a buddy of mine on ship, one of the sailors. I came back January 2nd and did a drive through Mogadishu, and you started to hear like "fuck you, America," and I was just like, "Wow, like what changed?" It's not even been a month,
Yeah.
and what it was they were starting to see that, especially the people who were loyal to Adid, that we were trying to tear Adid down to raise everybody else up. And obviously, Adid didn't like that, and his people didn't like that either. So that was where the hostility started.
There's a really good Netflix documentary that kind of breaks down how
Yeah,
have you seen it? It's like three or
yeah,
four
yeah,
parts. It's really, really good. I think it's really well put together and kind of informs you of kind of more geopolitical kind of facts that were going on at the time.
yeah.
Because I was a kid. At 93, I would have been what, 8 years old. You know what
Oh
I mean?
wow.
So of course, the Black Hawk Down movie inspired me to want to be a ranger at one point or whatever, but didn't really understand, kind of, I guess, after living through GWA and 4 deployments, I kind of also understand kind of
Yeah,
even more about how much of a pawn we actually were and just kind of the whole fucked upness of the situation. So it's always cool to get somebody else's perspective, particularly like a giant impactful event like that everybody knows for, Delta and the Rangers and
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
whole situation. But often forget, Marines were involved in that as well, and there were some other forces involved too. So it's really cool to hear your perspective. I want to kind of shift gears, and I want to talk about, you mentioned it took you 12 years in your career before you realized you could do something else, and
Yeah.
I think that that's greatly influenced by, your upbringing. Your dad was a Marine. You were around it the whole time. It was kind of set in stone, like this is what you're going to do, kind of thing,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
and this kind of starts moving into transition. So talk me through, how did you, what was it that you realized, like, hey, I'm not just a Marine and an artillery Marine in
Yeah.
support of the Marine Corps? Because this is one of the biggest problems that we face when we get out. My case, very, kind of, exacerbated by the fact that I joined at 17, spent a year in delayed entry, and
Mm.
when I joined, it was actually July 3rd of 2002, so right after 9/11. So,
Oh, wow.
my whole identity after high school, because I left a month after I graduated for basic training, was be the best infantryman in support of the global war on terror for the United States Army that you can be. That was my entire identity for 13 years, from 17 to 30 years old. And then I get out and I'm just like left standing with my dick in my hand. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm capable of. I have not had a chance. I think in your situation too, you went to ROTC, and this is just a kind of a new philosophy I'm working on. But like those 4 years of college, even if you are in ROTC, they're kind of like critical to building an identity of who you are.
Yeah.
Like you're meeting new people from, in my case, I grew up in small town Indiana. So, had I gone to college, it probably would have been a local college, but I would have at least met people from Illinois and Kentucky, Tennessee, probably, right? Like
Right.
started to expand that network or whatever and kind of learn more about myself. So walk me through how you figured out after 12 years, like I'm more than just an artillery infantry or artillery officer for the Marine
Yeah.
Corps.
Yeah. Well, so what ended up happening was I had a sense of it. Um, I remember when we were in Somalia, a good friend of mine, this guy, Jim Doyle, he was the battery fire direction officer and he was from Boston. But he was like, I'm doing 4 years and then I'm done. Like I've got a business plan, and he's a successful vice president, I think for IBM or something now. And I thought about that, but I was just like, I don't know how to do civilian. Like I don't know what that is. Like, and it was intimidating. And I wanted to be a writer. Like I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to work in Hollywood. That was kind of my childhood dreams. And I got stuff published when I was in high school. Like I had a short story published here in North Carolina. That same story won national recognition in a magazine. And so like that was kind of what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to do it. And it was around the 10 or 12 year mark, well, 11 or 12 year mark. I was stationed at Quantico, Virginia, and my brother came to visit, and I think he was out at Pendleton on the West Coast. And we're talking, and I had switched, so I lat moved from artillery into communications because I was like, well, I don't know what would an artillery officer do in the civilian world. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, I'm not going to go blow shit up. Like, it doesn't compute. But I thought communications, and that was what my dad had done. So he had before the internet, he had got into data systems. So he had moved out of infantry and into data systems. And I thought, well, that's what I'll do. I'll just do what my dad did, because that was my blueprint. That was the blueprint that I was creating for my life. And my brother came to town and we got together for dinner. And I just said, like, kind of that was my plan. Like I had already transitioned out from artillery in 1997. And he's like, yeah, but you got to do your own thing. Like you can't just follow dad. And it dawned on me at this point, I've been married and divorced. I had a 5-year-old daughter, 2003 to 2004, that was on the other side of the country. And I started to become disenchanted because I realized like, I am basically like, I'm on cruise control, kind of following my dad's blueprint for life. And I wasn't happy moving as a kid. And now I've professionally made that my job.
Right.
And that's on me.
Yeah.
That's on me. And so I got into, I got 2 master's degrees while I was in the Marine Corps. It was a great experience, but I started to realize like if I want to have a quote unquote normal relationship, it's not going to happen in the military because the pace of it is an incredible ask to go to someone and say, hey, can you uproot your life and move with me while I go play Marine?
Yeah, and I'm never going to be here. I'm not going to be here when you need me. I'm going to leave you alone for long periods of time. You're going to hate the attitude that I come back with because I'm not going to know how to work through my own shit. Like, it's a big ask.
And you're going to expect, and in a lot of cases, you're expected to play a role, a very sort of conventional role that the officer's wife plays.
Right.
Because you'll have a responsibility. Is that okay with you? Like, is just that okay? And plus, it's also like I met my ex about 4 months after we got back from Somalia, because my roommate, my college roommate, it just so happened that we got stationed on the same ship together. Like he was in logistics, but his buddy and I decided let's rent a house together. And we're running from a Marine officer, and this woman happened to be his daughter. And the calculus and rationale was, okay, by this point, I have at least, or at most, a year and a half left at this duty station. Can I get this relationship stable enough to make this thing professional? And I remember the day we got married, like we kind of eloped, and I was like, oh, this is a bad idea. It's a really bad idea. But it's got to be butterflies. So I've taken this baggage with me to Quantico, and I started to realize like I'd started writing again. I'd started writing a little bit of like poetry because that was like a creative outlet for me. And that raised eyebrows in the Marines too, because like, you don't write poetry. But the communications piece was critical because now, especially at Quantico, I'd started working with people who like had Cisco experience. So if you know the big Cisco IT company, and so I was like, oh, I'm starting to see I could do that. And so I made the decision to say, you know what, I'm not going to follow my dad's path. Like I don't want to do this anymore. I've been doing this my entire life. I have been moving, and I've been repeating this pattern because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And I don't want to do it anymore. And it just worked out that a buddy of mine who I'd gone to school with at Penn State worked in North Carolina worked for Lenovo, like the computer company Lenovo, I think,
Hmm.
and forwarded my resume to someone at Cisco who was a Marine or a Marine officer. And the guy reached out. I I had an interview with him and a couple people from his team, and then I was actually taking a plane up to Quantico because one of my old bosses worked for a defense contractor, and he's like, "I can get you a job, sure." And by the time I landed, I had a job offer from Cisco, but I was kind of like, you know what, I don't want to do the military anymore. Like, I don't want to be around that anymore. And I still was to an extent because when I came to Cisco, I got assigned Navy Marine Corps accounts. But just the idea that I was now working for a massive Fortune 500 company and not Uncle Sam anymore was a huge. It was a huge sense of relief because it was something I had done, and it was also a platform towards a greater realization that, oh my gosh, I might never move again. Like, I could actually stay in one place for a long time. And what is corporate America like? And what are civilians like? What are civilians like? Not from me wearing a uniform, but from me like blending in and walking with them all the time.
Yeah, so you were already thinking about getting out when you
Yeah.
discovered this, there's a better path for me kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I don't know how the Marine Corps is. I know in the Army, once you've realized your commitment as an officer, it's harder for enlisted because you sign contracts. But
Right.
officers, basically, once they've done their commitment, whatever that looks like, it's like I just drop paperwork and I'm out in 6
Right.
months.
Yeah.
So is it the same way for you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. It was just the announcement, the intention. I don't even think it was 6 months. It's just like gosh, I don't remember that part of it. But yeah, it's just like I'm like I've done what I set out to do, and it's not about like I don't want to. I'm not worried about anything else. And um,
So let's talk about that transition out because I know
yeah.
that wasn't smooth. I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, no.
Most people that I talk to that did have smooth transitions have some kind of extenuating circumstance where they were given a lesson by a mentor or a family member or something like that and prepared their whole career to get out. They kind of entered the military knowing that this ride ends someday. They didn't put their whole self or wrap their
Right.
identity into it.
Right.
Those are the outliers. Most of us are brainwashed like I was at
Yeah.
17.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To do all of that. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like, you can look at how the military recruits, they target people like me, poor, kind of come from a broken home, not much going on in Southern Indiana, not a lot of opportunity. And so it makes a lot of sense. And so what did your transition look like? And what was kind of, walk us through those challenges, those trials, those tribulations, and just where you were at and what you were going through all of that. I imagine you got out when in 04, 05?
2006.
Okay, so 2006.
Yeah,
And
August of 2006, and I started with Cisco September 1st.
okay, so there wasn't really a transition program back then, or
It was
maybe,
a transition assistance, but
yeah.
it was run by former Marines, and I remember like going to a class, and I was just like, "This is horrible."
Right.
It's
Well,
like,
it hasn't changed, even though we have an
yeah,
official tab
yeah,
program or a ACAT or whatever the fuck they call it now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's still just a blanket fix for an individual problem. And now I think even worse, they don't have former Marines or soldiers or sailors or airmen teaching this. They have civilians who can't possibly relate to the
Right.
experience because they've never lived it. And so
Yeah,
all the shit that I'm working to change, and that's hopefully going to change very soon. We'll see.
that's
But
awesome.
I want to hear, the reason I started this show was like, I thought that this would be the way to be the guy I didn't have when I got out. And I think oftentimes just telling our perspective and what we went through, at least from all of this that I've done, kind of, it just, people resonate with it because they don't know how to put their experience into words or verbalize it, or they just need to hear it from somebody else so that they know that they're not alone.
The biggest change is language and authority,
Yeah.
right? So in the military, especially as an officer, like you can say stuff, and sometimes there's no need for it. You don't expect a question, or you don't expect it like pushback, and really, and but you also like you also learn and season yourself as you go through because you have good first sergeants or sergeant first classes, and they give you perspective on stuff, and so you develop a seasoning that it's not just my way or the highway. Like, I want to make sure that I'm always taking care of my Marines or my people. Um, what was cool was, so I came in as a manager at Cisco, and I was given some Navy accounts and I think like one Marine account to start with. And my boss was Marine, so that was huge because we spoke the same language. There were one or two other people who had been Marines. One of the other managers that I worked with has been in the Air Force. So there is a soft landing in terms of understanding the culture, but like also, and nothing against the Air Force, but the Air Force has a very loose structure from
Hmm.
a discipline standpoint
Oh
compared
yeah,
to the
big
Rangers and
time.
Marines or things like that. And and so it's easier, I think, to assimilate into civilian life from that perspective. So I remember like sending stuff out, sending emails out to my team. And I remember this one guy named Matt who was really, really brilliant, a brilliant wireless engineer. And like I said something and he sent something back, unsubscribe. And I was like, what does that mean? And he was basically saying that what I was saying was he didn't like how I was writing what I wrote. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me adjust. All right, let me figure this out. And so you kind of learn that it's not about, you kind of have to really tune into your people and develop relationships with them. It's not just this kind of push where there's obviously, and I think it depends on the branch of service and the specialty that you're in, right? So
100%.
in like I just from my experience, Navy SEALs doesn't matter. Rank matters in terms of if someone ultimately has to make a decision, but from what I've seen, they're usually on first name basis
Yeah.
because of the intimacy. You don't necessarily see that in the Marines. And so those barriers are modified when you get into civilian life. And I remember I was trying to make sense of it. And I said, well, okay, as a manager, I need someone that I can talk to from my employees who I can treat like a sergeant major or first sergeant, something like, just so I have someone who I can bounce ideas off of to get their perspective. And so
You need an inside man.
so I grabbed somebody and said, you're going to be my inside person. Um, at the same time, the extent to which there were boundaries, I fumbled through. And I'll give you a great example. You mentioned it kind of the outset about the nuance in communications. So I had gone out with 4 or 5 employees for lunch, and this was back I think I'd been in the company 4 months by this point. And at Cisco, you used to be able to pay. I used to be able to pay like once a month to go out for lunch, and the company would pick it up. And so it's really cool because obviously in the Marines you didn't have that. We had like free soda in the break room. We're like, oh my god, free soda! This is crazy. Um, so we go out for lunch, and we're coming back into the office, and we're walking up the stairs of the ladder well. And I'm talking to the guy next to me, and I just said very plainly, I'm like, man, I got to take a shit. Because like in the Marines, that is
It's commonplace.
a commonplace. And he looked at me with disgust.
Yeah.
And he's like, keep it to yourself. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't talk about that stuff. And it sounds funny, but it's like, oh, there are limits, like there are boundaries, and you don't realize because, and it's just, I mean, it's obviously in the military, and I assume it's probably the same for fire and police as well. But the level of camaraderie and the level of exposure to how much you spend time together erodes those barriers. And so he said that, and I was like, oh man, wow. So for the next, really, for it was the next 4 or 5 years, and I wish I could say, oh, I was a quick learner, but every week I would finish the week and kind of reflect on, okay, what did I learn this week, and how does that compare to what I know?
Yeah.
So I need to change my approach to things. And the cool thing was at Cisco was they had a veterans program. So they had a veterans program to bring people in and help them kind of assimilate into corporate culture. And so I became the site lead for the campus here in North Carolina. And after, 10 years later, I think I became the national lead or the global lead for the program. But it was very day to day, kind
Yeah.
of, and it was learning to speak a different language, learning to respect boundaries, learning to treat people as individuals, regardless of what their position was in the company, because realizing that if you approach someone and say like, oh, I need this done now, sometimes they can say no
Right.
or screw you. Like I got other stuff. Like, what do you want me to take off my plate in order to do your pressing need?
Of
And that's a
course.
huge wake up because it speaks to the nuance of leadership and it speaks to the evolution of leadership. So it's, in the Marines, we used to say mission first, but people always. Like
Mhm.
you evolve to understand that you always have to take care of your people. And so in that sense, that translated really well, but understanding how to speak a different language took some time.
And I think too, I know this was over 20 years ago at this point, right? And what we're seeing, or at least what I'm seeing now, just through hundreds of conversations with vets who are getting out, who
Yeah.
are it's such a big problem too. There's secondary, tertiary things that affect this, but it starts with, the TAP class telling you, use your GI Bill, get the degree for enlisted guys anyway. I know you had an opportunity to get 2 masters. I was deployed every other year for my entire career as an infantry
Wow.
guy. School was
Yeah.
not an option for me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I tried twice, and, weeks after I signed up, I'm going back to the commander to get, so I don't have to pay for the classes. I have to drop them because the op tempo is high or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're telling you, use your GI Bill. Congratulations, you're a veteran. Everybody's going to want to hire you. You'll make 6 figures, slap you on the ass. You're successful. Well, that's simply not true. And what it's doing is it's priming us as we're getting out to think, like, oh, we're going to have it made. And then we get this miserable job. And what I'm finding with a lot of vets in these first and second jobs that they take when they get out just to survive is they go in, like you're saying, not knowing how to speak the language, the civilian language, often not understanding how the systems work. But really what it seems to me is our leadership is on a level that's really unparalleled to anything that you find in the civilian world. And now
Sure.
you're leading in rooms where mediocrity is the standard, and rooms of people who don't want to be led, and that's a big hurdle to overcome. It does go back to what you said, mission first, people always. So learning your people, but then also learning how to get those people who are used to a mediocre standard that you're not used to, who don't necessarily want to be led, who are just there to do the bare minimum, collect their paycheck, and go home. Now you have to figure out how to work with those people, and I think that's a big challenge for a lot of us. We're not wired that way. There's a reason I'm not in corporate America and I'm running 3 different companies. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Right.
just that resonates way more than having a boss and trying to communicate with people who are never going to be on my level leadership wise. And that's not a knock on them. If that's the life you choose, then so be it. But I want more for myself. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and it's there's different paradigms, right? Because in the military, the greatest job you can do isn't going to get you a financial reward. You might get a ribbon for it, but the pay scale is very structured and there's a very kind of stepping stone gradual approach. I remember like one of the terms that I became acquainted with fairly early, and it didn't apply to me because I was in post sales support, but Cisco is a sales driven company. And so you hear, well, that guy's coin operated. Like he's all just after the money. And I remember probably 3 years into my career, one of my friends was a service salesperson. He had been in the military, I think he'd been in the Air Force. But he was in sales now. And I remember I went over to his desk because we're working on a deal. And he's like, yeah, just a second. And he's on eBay. And I watch him purchase a car, a Maserati for $70,000. And in my mind, I'm like, are you financing that? And he's like, no, I paid cash. I'm like, oh.
Right.
And so in that sense, you see that, and Cisco is a pay for performance company.
Yeah.
So there is a distinct reward for you maximizing your value and effort because it could like I remember when I became a director at Cisco in 2019 and it was time. I think this might have been like in 2020 when it was time for the award, like our final bonuses to come out or something. And my boss gave me some stock options, and I was like, "Holy smoke!" Like I just could not believe that. Like wow. But you see that is what life is like outside the military when you work for a big Fortune 500 company like that.
Right.
And there is a fine tuning where it's not about you know suck it up and drive on. Like there's none of that, and in fact, if anything, one of the great benefits that my military service gave me in Cisco was when people were running around with their hair on fire about different things, I could say, is anyone shooting at us? Like,
Right. The calm and the
if,
chaos, right?
yeah,
Like
if there's no
you
one
just poised.
shooting,
Yeah.
let's contextualize this a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that calming effect, like there's a dividend to that. So, but it was extraordinary to see the disparity between the mindset that the military creates, where you are absolutely going to do more with less,
Less. Yeah.
and not get rewarded for it other than maybe an attaboy, or here's a Navy Achievement Medal or something like that, compared to here is a huge payout because you helped us with this project over the course of the year, or here's a huge promotion where your salary is increasing by a significant amount, something that you would never see in the military circle. So in that sense, it is a huge transition, but that takes a mindset shift too, because it's not about like, I'm going to do my best because it's the right thing to do. It's, oh, like if I can find a way to do this better or more efficiently, I could get paid more or rewarded more for it.
Yeah. And I got to say, you landed at a good company too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I
Cisco's
like
great.
Cisco a lot. Cisco, I actually I do have beef with kind of their courses. I just finished the EVV program in March
Okay.
and got access to a bunch of, Cisco technology certification courses. So I signed up for Python 1 and 2. And I was really disappointed because it's a lot of reading. And I'm like, I need the practical stuff. I need like to actually hands-on like code something. So I kind of really quickly fell off. But any company who is really opening, expanding veteran kind of, access to certification. And there's a ton that Cisco offers, not just Python. There's a
Yeah. Oh, for
bunch,
sure.
network stuff, IT stuff, security stuff, all that stuff. So I love Cisco. What was the decision for you to leave Cisco?
So I published my first book in 2017, and I kind of like that was I wanted to leave and do my own thing.
On the way to being a writer, like you had
Yeah,
said,
like it
right?
took
Like
me.
so,
So
actually achieving your dream and putting yourself
yeah,
out there
yeah,
to do
yeah.
it.
Like for 11 years after I got out, because that was one of the revelations I had. Was like, oh my gosh, I could start writing down. Like I just the psychology of being able to say, with the stability of not having to get to know a new place, still getting to know a new job, but I felt like, let me write. And I wanted to become like the next Stephen King. Like I loved horror stories growing up, and Stephen King was just so great at that. And so for 11 years, like I worked full time. I was teaching yoga. I learned how to become a yoga instructor. That wasn't part of my plan at all.
Essential
Um,
to healing.
oh, for sure, huge, huge. And then on weekends I would start writing, but I didn't have a writing practice. Like I didn't really like. I remember I was an English major in college, and I remember one of my professors said, "Writers write, like every day, just write something." And I didn't do that. And so I'd sit down at my computer and think, okay, I'm going to write. It's going to be perfect. And it never was. So I'd write like 100 pages. It just wouldn't work out. The characters would get flimsy. The plot would get flimsy. And then finally, after 11 years, I said, you know what? I'm going to help people find their purpose in life. Like I read a book called Think and Grow Rich. And in the first or second chapter of the book, the author says, what is the purpose of your life?
Yep.
Whoa.
It goes back to
Whoa.
the ikigai principle. Yeah.
Yeah, like what a
Yeah.
concept. Like my life has purpose. Oh my gosh.
I
So
may
I
or may
wrote,
not have read that same book 2 or 3 times.
yeah, yeah. I was listening to it this morning. I went for a walk earlier today, and I was listening to some of it again. So I wrote Whiskey and Yoga in 2017, and it became a #1 international bestseller. And I was like, oh, wait, like wait for the media to come see how I did this. And like after a week after the launch, one of the people who helped me with the launch said, well, how are you going to help people? Like, what's your platform? I was like, oh, I just thought people were going to come run into my door.
Oh, yeah, that's
No,
not how it works.
no, not at all. So I was like, well, and for some reason I felt like, well, purpose is overdone. Like Napoleon Hill did this like 60 years ago. So I was still working, and I had an idea for my next book. I published that book right at the beginning of the pandemic, so in March of 2020. And I had an idea for my third book, and that book took I don't want to say religious, because I appreciate that there is so much people have their own conventions about religion. It can be very structured and dogmatic and
So it took
limiting
a
in some.
spiritual approach
Yeah,
because
so I took a very spiritual kind of approach, and for 2 years during the pandemic, just trying to figure out what this book was dominated my life. And so finally, I finished the book in August of 2022, and my boss had seen that I was struggling with something deep, and I'd shared a little bit with him, and then finally I shared the cover of the book with him, and he's like, "That is awesome." And I said, "I'm giving you another year, and then I'm leaving. Like I'm because I got to go figure out how to like help people and serve people." And the company said, "Well, we're going to give you 5 more months because in December they did a layoff." And he's, he's kind of like, "You're in." I said, "Oh, yeah, it's fine. Like, I understand. I would leave on my own terms. You're letting me leave with a package, so I'll take that." And I could, I thought about, well, gosh, this is not my plan. Like, my plan was another 6 months after this, but it's their plan, so let me work with it. And I'd become a coach in 2017 too. So I got certified. I got a certified professional coach, and then I became a strength coach because Cisco had a coaching program that they used for their employees, and I got that in 2017 as well. I said, okay, well, let me coach. Let me coach. Let me continue to write and kind of build this thing out. And that was kind of the decision. And it was like, and Cisco's a great place to work. I loved working with Cisco, and yet I also for 5 or 6 years had been wanting to do my own thing. And then it was like, okay, well, go do your own thing and figure that out. And so it's been coaching. I've written a couple more books since then. I'm actually working. I finished a screenplay about a month ago and have sent that off to someone who had inquired about if I'd want to turn one of my books into a movie. Um, so yeah, it was just like, how do you make your own thing work? And the only way you do that is by getting in and doing it. Like, you got to figure out, you got to learn all those lessons. And obviously there's so many people that have trailblazed the path of an entrepreneur. So it's just learning from the people who've gone before you and trying to pick up their lessons as quickly as possible.
100%, man. That's what I've learned over the last 2 years. Is it's truly about who you know, finding the right people, talking, asking the right questions, getting the right advice, implementing, and moreover, there's no shortcut. You just have to take the
Right.
risk, bet on yourself, and figure it the fuck out. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like I tell people that all the time. They're like, "Well, I don't even know where to start." It's like, well, just start. Just start somewhere,
Yeah.
And I like what you're talking about. I talk to a lot of vets who have made it through their transition and are doing wonderful things in the world, and they all have this big revelation. It's like, I got to bet on myself. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not happy here, truly, even though you probably could have still been working for Cisco and not been completely miserable, but it's something inside you was telling you, I've got to go my own way.
Yeah.
I see that so much here, man, myself included. I'm a licensed commercial pilot, instructor, all that stuff. Like, I could be making decent money,
Right.
working very little. And instead I chose to do the hard thing and not make any money for 2 years and figure out the entrepreneur thing, which will completely change my life. And I just love hearing you talk about this because you're a prime example. You worked 10 or 12 years at a company and then learned what you needed to learn to go out on your own, kept publishing books. I like that you said, writers write, you have to have a writing practice. And
Yeah.
for you, that looked like being grounded and staying in one place. I'm actually the opposite. I have a travel bug. I love to travel. And
Yeah.
me going to new places, actually, I'm not a big writer. I actually hate it. I'm a voice notes guy. However, when I do travel, I just came back from Peru. I wrote the most that I've written in probably 15 years while I was in Peru. I filled up
Wow.
an entire Electrum notebook about and it was intentional this time. But I've started to realize the more I travel, the more I go into new places, the more I'm inspired to write about my experience, which I think unlocks kind of everything else that I do. So it's just really interesting to see there's no right or wrong way to do it is kind of my
Sure.
point there, right? Like, so for you, that's being grounded in North Carolina in one spot, being able to focus on your writing. For me, that's being all over the world, leveraging those experiences to draw out my creativity and my writing abilities, which informs literally everything else that I do.
Well, and I mean, I love to travel, but is the idea of not having to move, like to relocate. Like
Oh,
I
see, I'm
mean,
all about that, man. I get
yeah.
antsy, 2 or 3 years
Oh, really?
in one place. Yeah, I've got to be
Oh,
on the move.
interesting. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just, I'm finding quickly that like home ownership and having a mortgage, and that's just not a life that I want. I want to
Yeah.
be in
I can
different
appreciate that.
places all over, all the way. And it's just something about the way that I operate. I
I
don't
love that.
I still don't
Yeah.
know how to like fully explain it or unpack it, which is kind of the fun part, right? Like I get to learn about myself more and more every day. And you'd
Sure.
think at 40 years old I would have that figured out, but I think that's
Wow.
also the lesson is like life is a never ending journey, and you're always going to learn new things about yourself if you're paying attention. And
Absolutely.
I think it's important that we start to realize that. I think that's the where TAP gets it wrong is blanket fix for an individual problem. They're not meeting you where you're at. They're defining success for you. And I just believe the opposite, right? Like I need to look in the mirror. I need to have the hard conversations with myself and ask myself, what does success look like to me?
Well, and you hit on such a great point because the military doesn't cater to you.
No.
Like and I mean, we sign contracts, right? You take an oath. Like where else, outside? I mean, there are very few jobs or endeavors in life where you are taking an oath to uphold and support something. I mean, immigrants who become American citizens have to take an oath, but American citizens don't have to take an oath. And you realize there is a conditioning that comes to that because you are signing your life away to someone else. Someone else is literally in charge. And so when you condition yourself to that mindset and then you get out and you kind of realize, oh, this is up to me. It takes some time. It certainly took some time for me to adjust, but also it's also cool because in the Marines, there is a tremendous focus on your internal resiliency, like your independent resiliency. I remember in Somalia, there was a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. So after Somalia, I came back to the West Coast and I went to Paris Island to train Marines for 2.5 years. And I was a series commander. So I had like a platoon of 120 recruits. And then during one of my training platoons or companies, they brought in this reporter. They said, hey, he was in Somalia too, and he wants to know how we make Marines because he saw that in the Marines, we give a 20-year-old Lance Corporal the same responsibility sometimes that the Army gives like a 28-year-old sergeant first class or something.
Yep.
And so how does that happen? And so we worked and so there is this sense of like, I have a sense of resilience, but I need to focus and sharpen it. And you can
Yeah.
only like you said, you can only do that by doing it.
Right.
Like you can learn from other people, but you still have to put it into implementation. And I remember it was probably like 2018 for April Fools. I had at the time I had 3 managers and like 60 employees under me. And I said, for April Fools, I said, I've decided that I'm leaving Cisco and I'm going to go become a monk in Hawaii. And nobody thought it was a joke. Like they're like, oh, we could totally see you doing that. I'm like, okay. So, but in some ways it was cool. I'm like, well, I guess I've really transitioned out of the military. Like now, if I've gone that and no one is surprised by this approach, okay, I've made some progress. So, yeah, it is. And there's and what you realize is that's all mindset, right? There's
Yeah.
a mindset because if you focus on scarcity, if you just focus on what you don't have, it's like if you're driving a motorcycle and you don't turn sharp enough and there's a telephone pole, if you focus on the telephone pole, you are going to hit the telephone pole.
Look
And
down, go down. Yeah.
you start to learn, I need to focus on where I want to go.
Yeah.
Like I can't worry about like the telephone pole.
Yeah.
And in that sense, you start to realize that it's kind of fun. Like it's kind of fun to be like,
It's so
oh,
much fun. It's
yeah,
so much fun. It
yeah,
really is. Like waking up every day, not knowing, like, I didn't know we were going to have such a great conversation. We'd never met ever.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like, and now we get to connect and start to build a relationship, which I hope, very much for the future, we stay in contact
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and like, that's the fun part about all this, all the people that I've met, all the opportunity that I've created for myself as a poor kid from Indiana, just through having this podcast that doesn't have impressive download numbers or anything like that. I'm just too stupid to quit. Like, it creates opportunities. I've partnered with a plant medicine retreat, get to lead veterans down there to change their lives. Something
Nice.
that definitely helped me.
Yeah.
I was asked to come in and help, co-found an AI and automation company, which is like the prime space you want to be in right now, which is something that I absolutely love. Constant learning, constant like go the op tempo. It's an op tempo thing
Yeah,
because
for
AI
sure.
is changing so much, and you got to filter the noise from the actual what's relevant, and it's just so much fun. And to get to actually make money doing it, it's like, oh, I'm not bound to anybody but myself. At any point, I can say I quit. I don't want to do
Yeah.
this and go do something else. I think it's amazing. Just you've navigated the journey from military to corporate leadership, coaching, personal transformation. To close this out, what is just one lasting piece of advice you'd give to those that are listening, particularly those who are about to get out, that are seeking purpose and even financial independence? What would you want to say to them? What do you want them to take away from the conversation?
I remember even at the basic school. So I was 22 years old as a second lieutenant at the basic school. And I remember someone saying, like, come up with a 3 to 5 year plan. I'm like,
Yeah.
plans. And I didn't. And I remember when I talked to my buddy Doyle, Jim Doyle, who said he was only going to do 4 years when we were in Somalia, and that's what he did. He had a plan. He had a 3 to 5 year plan, and it speaks to also. And I know you said you don't like to write. What you write is what you invite.
100%.
And and just to kind of to tie this back to my journey as a writer. So when I published Whisk and Yoga, it was a struggle because I was shifting from Stephen King writing to now personal development, trying to help people. I was also becoming vulnerable because I was sharing bumps and bruises I'd learned along the way so that other people wouldn't have to make those mistakes, not realizing that get over your own ego and realize if you can help someone by helping them avoid a mistake that I made, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, so my second book was really well written, even though I still didn't have a great writing practice. And then during the pandemic, when I was working on book number 3, it took me about a year and a half just to come up with the title for the book. And for me, part of my writing practice is I can't write until I know what the title is because the title is the first outline. So for 18 months, I just journaled from like June of 2020 until November of 2021 or December 2021. I journaled. I wrote about 1,000 pages. And what that did was it put me in touch with me.
Yes.
Because I started to like figure out who this person is and the different psychologies inside of me. Like, it's not just like and we all have different aspects to our personality. And to come into appreciation of that and to realize that even the dark aspect of me, the thing that I might project on someone else, is something that I get to integrate. Like, I get to integrate that to become more. And so developing a journal practice is so powerful for you to shape your thoughts, to shape where you want to take your life. Because if you can write it down and express it to yourself, you can make it and bring it to life. I mean, that is the basis. If you think about anything that we see today, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, everything has a script. There's a script to it. And you, in some ways, have the opportunity to write the script of your life by saying, like, how do I want to create my life? Who do I want to be surrounded by? What kind of experiences do I want to have? If you can put that down in paper, not on the computer, but on paper, there is a physical reaction that changes in your nervous system because you're doing it by hand and you are creating those sentences and words. And that is so transformational. Writing to me is the sculpting of my soul.
You're literally rewiring your brain. You're
Absolutely.
forming
100%.
new neural pathways that
100%.
Yeah, I resonate with everything that you're saying. I don't write as much as I should. I know that's a problem and I should correct it, but this kind of feeds into, the abundance mindset that you kind of touched on. Like, shifting from a fixed to a growth and abundance mindset is super important, because then you stop chasing money, and then money starts to find you. But also, just manifesting your own life by writing it down on paper, because it's rewiring your brain. I imagine over those 1,000 pages, you learned a lot about yourself and learned about the approaches that you could take to get to where you want to go. And you probably even, subconsciously started seeing those changes in your life, your daily life, without even realizing them. It's incredible, like, the power behind this stuff. It's not I know a lot of people think it's taboo or woo-woo or just kind of out there, but the shit actually has merit and it really does work. And I really want to encourage people to really hang on to what we're talking about here, because this is how you do it. This is how you live the life that you want to do. And I was, right before you said it, I was literally thinking, write your own script to your own life. Just do it.
Well, and you know what else? And it's such a good point to close out on, Adam, is burn the boats.
Yep.
Like there's a great story and it gets attributed to different people. The version I like is Caesar invading England and orders the legionnaires to burn the boats because he basically says, we'll be victorious or we'll die here.
Yeah.
And you realize I really, within the last 2 weeks, I've really come to appreciate that what that means is like, it is, you must participate in your own rescue, whatever that is to you. Like you want to become the captain of your ship. Journaling, if you can express to yourself who you are and what you want, your ability to convey that to others and bring that to life is going to magnify tremendously.
Yeah. Brother, tell everybody how they can find your books, find you, get in contact with you if they're interested in some kind of coaching or just, want some advice, to reach out. I always encourage people to reach out to the guests here. I don't think anybody's going to charge them for, a half an hour of their time just to get some advice, but I think it's powerful, man. And it's really cool to see some of the earlier episodes getting traction and people reaching back out to me like, hey, can I get their contact info? I'd really like to have a conversation with them. So just let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of updating my website, davidrichardsauthor.com. You can reach out to me there if you want to talk. My books are available there. My books are on Amazon as well under David Richards. Instagram, David Richards Author is my main social media. So happy to connect with anybody. If you're in transitioning, if you just want to talk about your experiences, I'm here for you.
I love it, man. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you David Richards. Please don't hesitate to reach out to him. And we'll see you guys next week with another great episode. Thanks, brother.
Adam, thank you.
That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.